This is going to be one of my videos in my extended Bible series, where I delve into the Bible in detail, looking at each section and breaking down the prophecies, the visions, the stories and the accounts with what we know historically and what science has discovered for us, as well as what the Bible itself tells us. If this is the sort of video you're interested in, please like and share it with your friends. The more discussion we have, the better. Any thoughts you have, please leave in the comments. And if you're that sort of person who likes to stay up to date with things, please consider subscribing to the channel. Apart from that, I hope you enjoyed the video.
The Bible seemingly has an explanation for every little thing, from the origin of all living things to the diversification of the nations across the world. Few of them are without reproach, but one that raises a few questions, in particular, is the brief story of the Tower of Babel being the explanation behind the multiple languages spoken worldwide. However, upon the examination of this part of the Bible and the historical connections, I think there is something different about the story. The tower is well known in biblical lore and historical sources, but I'm not sure the story is the explanation we require for this, and in fact has a different meaning altogether. I shall develop this as I go on, and to make this point I'll be answering these three questions. Could it have happened? What are the facts behind it? And what else can it signify? Since this is part of the book of Genesis and therefore part of Moses' writings, it is most likely not going to be an account. I'm not entirely sure what category this would fall under, since it lacks the detail, fantastical or otherwise, of an oral story. It's too vague and short-handed to be a vision, and doesn't have the looseness of a metaphor, at least the wording doesn't. It could in theory be a story that was merely summarized by the storyteller to the scribe. A footnote in records that may have survived, or possibly a minor vision. But in short, we really don't know. If I was going to put a bet on this, however, I would be willing to go with a summarized story, as it feels like it could potentially have a ballad written about it, just by going by the bones of the story. So for this video, this is what I'll be going by. Since the rest of the passages surrounding this story consist of further genealogies from Noah and onwards, I'm inclined to label them as further annotations from the earlier records, since, seeing as you're probably in the dark about this, I recommend checking out the first offspring, which was my last video. I'll be paraphrasing for most of this, so if you want further details, check out the links to Bible chapters in the description. First thing everyone will point out, especially if they're reading the Bible along with this, is there's a contradiction in the preceding chapter, where it says not once, but 3 times, that's 3 things, yes, that the descendants of Noah's sons were separated according to his language. Therefore, language was diversified before this time. Now, whilst this may seem like a contradiction, it's simply retconned by the story of the tower, where the reasons for the different languages are explained. I said before at the start of this project, the Bible wasn't a good book, and by modern standards, it's terrible in terms of streamlining and continuity. But the timelines being broadly similar, just slightly out of sync, this is certainly not a contradiction. It's merely backdating. In terms of location, many people agree it was set in ancient Babylon. The text says the lands of Shinar, which is believed to be an eastern way of saying Sumer, which is certainly where Babylon was. And since it also says they came from the east, it seems likely this was the case. The height of the tower is never given officially. The text merely says reaches to the heavens, though later books imply it's in the region of 2,400 meters. Many people might say, and rightly, that such a tower is impossible to build, even by modern standards. Particularly as our tallest building currently is the Burj Khalifa, which is only 828 meters tall. However, since it's never stated to have been finished, it was most likely planned to be that high, only for God to interfere with their plans. Scholars have compared this story to other great feats of building work in the newly civilizing age. Most notably, the Etemenethai, if I pronounced that correctly, which is a mighty ziggurat built in honor of the Mesopotamian god Marduk. This isn't overwhelming proof of the evidence of the tower and the validity of the story, but it shows that great feats of this sort would have been possible for those people. However, slightly different opinion, since it's never specified why the tower was built, and is only said to make themselves known or make a name for themselves, it could well be that it was raised to another god, possibly Marduk, who knows, and thus were punished by God, by Yahweh. It's not unreasonable to assume this, because, after all, Moses himself broke the golden calf his followers had constructed in order to worship. The name Babylon is, as many people will notice, similar to Babel. That is mostly because it's the Hebrew name for the city, as mentioned in the Bible. Babel is Babylon. It's often thought that it was derived from the Hebrew word of balal, which means to jumble or confuse. However, the local Akkadian name for the city was Bab-ilim, meaning Gate of God. You can quite easily see the irony here, since this in itself is likely a confusion of words. Whether that comes from the storyteller, the scribe that wrote it down, or later scholars who were quibbling about it, we may never know. But we can easily link this to happenstance. I think the name Babel has a different reason for it. Similar, but notably different. I will get to that in a moment, but I first want to bring up how languages evolve. It's been written that the whole world once spoke one language, though no one knows what that language is. It may seem ridiculous and fanciful, but it isn't too far from what etymologists have gleaned by looking at the many common roots of modern languages in ancient languages. A classic example is many languages across the Western world being linked to Proto-Indo-European. True, some words do change due to slippage in common usage, confusion in the written word, and also introduction of new words into the lexicon. But to have languages shatter because of a single event of mass confusion doesn't add up in any way. Granted, God has been known to do some mad stuff like that. I'm not sure this is the case here. It takes a shifting of understanding around a common conception that makes languages mutually incomprehensible, which isn't something that can happen overnight, most commonly. A classic example is actually a word we use quite often. Identical, meaning similar or exactly the same, comes from the Latin word idem, which means the same. It has been vulgarized and adapted over a couple of generations. Looking it up, you can see idem was in use during the 15th century, so the 1400s, but fell into identical come the 1600s, in the 17th century. So after losing a couple of generations, the original statement about languages being different after many generations in different areas sounds more likely than the Tower of Babel. It's worthwhile mentioning here. But why is it mentioned at all? Why is the Tower of Babel even brought up? For that, let me read that section of the Bible to explain my thinking. And they said, "Let us build a city, with a tower whose top is in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the earth." But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of man had built. And the Lord said, "Indeed the people are one, and they have one language. And this is what they begin to do." This to me sounds like man is sticking himself on equal footing with God, and so have too great an ego. It's possible that they have even thought that climbing to the heights of the gods will make them gods, or show that gods weren't much to listen to in the first place. If you will, it's an example of a denouncer. It goes on. Come, let us confuse their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord God scattered them over the face of the earth, and they ceased building the city. To give you an idea of what I think has happened, you have to think of it like industrial sabotage. How do you stop someone building a bigger business than you when you are already in that position? You discredit the man in charge, either by making him look bad or incompetent. A quick fire and sneaky way of doing it is slipping something in his drink. The classic laced drink we use. It can be anything from high-proof alcohol to muscle relaxants or even hallucinogenic drugs. Either way, if you tell it right, his support will soon crumble, and so will his business. I think you can see where I'm going with this. I personally think that God struck madness into the minds of those who were building the tower and left them babbling incoherently. This is well within the power of God, and quite frankly, if someone is hoping to see another God shown favour because of such a noteworthy feat, or to prove there isn't a God, they're certainly going to be terrified by the appearance of an angered God, and not only left gibbering, but possibly sent running to the ends of the earth. True, the text doesn't say mind-breaking, it does say language is getting confusing, but I think that is due to the story being retold and changed to be something different, but still holding the same core theme, as is common in most oral traditions. In this case, the bones of the story are man trying to build a tower to reach the heavens. God saw them essentially united against him, confused them so they couldn't operate in a functional manner, and they scattered across the four corners. This can lead to all manner of stories and legends across the years, and interestingly enough, many similar tales do exist in other cultures, even allowing for cultural influences. They are still diverse enough and yet similar. So quickly to answer the questions. How could this have happened? It's certainly possible, but similar to the flood, it's not going to be the same as the story of the Bible. The evolution of language doesn't work like that, and it's more than possible that people are driven mad by God coming down and giving them what for. It's certainly well known in the Bible that can happen. Where are the facts? The Etemeniac, again difficult to pronounce, has been documented not only by King Nebuchadnezzar II, but by Herodotus, and later translations from the early tablets of Uruk. Many think this could have been the inspiration for the Tower of Babel, but add that to the many cultures with similar stories, and we have a vague event that is known by many men across the world. Languages also change in a different manner to what the story describes, but it does highlight the common root of most major languages. Take a closer look and you'll see that nearly all of them link back to the early Indo-European languages. What else can it signify? This can be a cautionary tale of having ideas literally above one's station, and a further sign of God's wrath upon those who dare defy him, or simply the effect of seeing God has on the unbelieving, and what can result from this. It doesn't explain why we have different languages, but due to the way the original story changes again and again, it became such a thing in the time period that Moses would have heard it. In a way, this is a definite irony, that the story of how language changed by confusion has in itself changed in a similar manner. So to sum up, you could say the overarching story has in itself a metaphor. It shows how we can get confused quite easily. It also shows when man tries to stand with God in heaven just to make a name for ourselves and make it known to everyone, we are not going to be successful in that endeavour. whilst there is theory about Babylon having plenty of slaves, I think ultimately having a big ego is not the way to get to God.
Hope you enjoyed this video. Please feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. Like, share and subscribe. Until next time, thanks for watching and God bless.